The bell of the Concordat spire rang only 3 times in 1,000 years. Once when a star died inside council space. Once when a war began. And now, on this cold blue morning, for the 3rd time. No one in the chamber knew yet what the 3rd reason was. High Arbiter Saloon sat on her dark stone seat at the front of the great hall. Her long silver robe spread over the floor like spilled water. Around her, 60 council members filled the curved benches. Some looked angry. Some looked tired. A few looked frightened, though they would never say so out loud. The matter before them was simple, on paper. A vote. A young species, found 2 sectors out, on a small blue world. The species called itself human. The council file marked them as Tier 3. Primitive. Loud. Strange. The proposal was clean and short. In them now, before they spread. Councillor Brand stood up first. He was thin and gray, with eyes like wet glass. He spoke in a flat voice. We have done this before. 16 times. Every time we waited, the cost was higher. We act now, or we pay later. Many heads nodded. Saloon was about to call the vote. Then the side doors of the chamber opened. The guards did not move. They could not. The being walking through the doorway was someone no guard in the galaxy would ever try to stop. He was tall, far too tall for the room. His head almost touched the upper arch as he passed under it. His skin looked like cracked stone, gray and dry, lined with old white scars. One of his eyes was gone, replaced by a smooth black pit. The other eye was pale yellow and very tired. He wore no armor. He carried no weapon. He did not need to. A whisper moved through the chamber like wind through dry grass. Vorathan. That cannot be him. He is dead. He must be dead. But he was not dead. He was here. For 600 years, Vorathan the Hollow had been the worst name in the known stars. Mothers used it to scare children into silence. Soldiers wrote it on the inside of their helmets to remind themselves to be brave. Whole worlds had paid him tribute just to be left alone. And now he was walking, slowly, into the highest court of the galaxy. Alone, unarmed. He stopped in the center of the floor. He bowed his head a little to the High Arbiter. Then he spoke. His voice was low and rough, like stones turning over far underground. I asked for 1 hour. Brand found his voice first. You have no right to be here. Vorathan did not look at him. He kept his one yellow eye on Saloon. I asked for 1 hour, he said again. Before the vote. After that, you may do what you wish, and I will leave. Saloon's hands were very still on the arms of her seat. She studied the old killer for a long moment. She had read every report ever written about him. None of them prepared her for the simple fact of his presence. The room felt smaller around him. The air felt heavier. Why, she said. Vorathan was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be choosing his words with great care, the way a man might choose stones to cross a deep river. Because I have hunted humans, he said. And because I am the only one in this room who has done so and lived. And because if you cast this vote without hearing me, you will not be voting on their lives. You will be voting on yours. Bran laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but it died fast. No one else in the chamber laughed with him. The silence that followed his laugh was worse than any shout. Saloon leaned forward. You came here on your own, she said. No one called you. No one paid you. No one, Vorathan agreed. Then why? The old warrior was quiet again. His one good eye moved slowly across the rows of council members. He looked at each of them, one by one, as if he were trying to remember their faces, trying to count them. Because I have spent 26 years, he said at last, hoping no one would ever bring this matter to a vote. Because I knew, one day someone would. And because I made a promise, a long time ago, in a cold ship far from here, that if this day came, I would speak. He looked back at Saloon. 1 hour. That is all. Saloon did not look at Bran. She did not look at the rest of the council. She did not need to. She had already made her choice. Granted, she said. He sat down slowly. His joints made small, dry sounds. He folded his long hands in his lap. And in a voice that the entire galaxy would soon need to hear, he began to speak. 26 years ago, Vorathan said, I took a contract. There were 7 of us. We were the best. And we believed, as you believe now, that humans were small. The room did not move. 60 council members, the High Arbiter, the guards by the doors, even young Kesses standing at the back wall, none of them so much as breathed loudly. They were waiting. Vorathan the Hollow stared at his folded hands for a long moment. When he began again, his voice was steady, but the lines on his old face seemed to grow deeper. The contract came to us through 6 different channels, he said. That was the first warning. No one wanted their name on it. The job sounded simple. A small human ship had been damaged in the Black Reach. It was alone. No backup. No fleet. Just a survey vessel called the Cassiopeia with a crew of 42. He paused. We were paid to make sure none of them came home. A counselor near the back made a small sound. Vorathan did not look up. There were 7 of us, he said. 7 hunters, drawn from 7 different worlds. I will not name them all. Most of you would know the names. Some of you would not believe me. I will say only this. Every one of them was a champion of their kind. Every one of them had killed more enemies than I can count. We had each, alone, ended wars. Together, we believed nothing alive could stand against us. His one yellow I lifted to saloon. I was wrong about many things in my life, High Arbiter. I have never been more wrong than that day. He let the words sit in the air. Then his voice shifted, and the chamber changed with it. The cold blue light of the spire seemed to fade. Somewhere behind the listening minds of every council member, another room formed. A darker one. The bridge of a small black ship, lit only by red lamps. 6 other shapes moving in that red light. The hum of an old jump drive cooling down after a long voyage. We came out of jump 3 days from the wreck, Vorathan said. We sat in the dark and we watched the human ship for a full day before we moved. That was our way. We never rushed. We learned the prey first. We learned how it moved, how it slept, how it spoke. Then we struck. He shook his head slowly. The Cassiopeia was crippled. The reports were correct. Half her engines were dead. Her front hull was torn open. She was leaking air in 3 places. We watched repair crews in white suits walking on her outer plates, slow and small. We counted them. We listened to their radio chatter. A small, dry sound came from his throat. It might have been a laugh, once. They were singing, he said. The chamber stirred. Singing? Brand said sharp. Singing, Vorathan repeated. While they worked. Old songs. About fields. About rain. About people they missed. We did not know what the words meant then. One of my hunters, a Krevax warrior named Halland, said it was a sign of a broken mind. He said only a weak species sings while their ship dies under them. Vorathan looked down at his hands again. Halland was the first of us to die. For a moment, no one spoke. On the 2nd day, Vorathan went on. We sent a probe. A very small one, the size of a finger. We slipped it through one of the holes in their hull. We watched their inside corridors for 6 hours. We mapped every room. We marked every human. We saw their captain, a quiet man, brown skin, gray hair at the sides of his head, soft eyes. He walked from room to room. He listened to his crew. He laughed at their bad jokes. He helped a young engineer fix a panel by holding the light for her. Vorathan's good eye narrowed. I remember thinking, this is the man we will kill first. Take the head, the body falls. That was our way. He drew in a slow breath. On the 3rd day, we boarded. The chamber was silent again. We came in through the torn front section. We were quiet. We were fast. We were perfect. The probe had told us where every human would be. We split into 2 teams. Halland and 2 others went toward the engine deck. I took the rest toward the bridge. Vorathan's hands tightened a little and then went still. In the first corridor, there were no humans. That was correct. The probe had said so. In the second corridor, there were no humans. That was correct. In the third corridor, there were no humans. A counselor leaned forward. The probe had said 3 engineers were in that corridor, working on a wall panel. We had been watching them for hours. They were not there. The panel was open. Their tools were on the floor. A cup of something hot was still steaming on a small shelf. But the engineers were gone. He closed his good eye for a moment. That was when I felt it. The first cold thing in my chest. Not fear. Not yet. Something younger than fear. The feeling a hunter gets when the deer is not where the deer should be. When the forest is too quiet. When the hand that left the cup steaming is also the hand that knows you are coming. He opened his eye. I should have called the hunt off then. Right there. In that empty corridor, with the steam rising from the cup. If I had, 6 of my hunters would still be alive. I did not call it off. I told them to keep moving. We were the best in the galaxy. We had hunted gods, in our way. What could a singing crew of broken explorers do to us? He looked up at the chamber. 6 minutes later, Halland stopped answering his radio. Outside the Concordat spire, a thin rain had begun to fall on the capital city. None of the council members heard it. Their world had narrowed to one room and one voice and one story. Vorathan touched the rim of his empty eye socket with 2 long fingers. The gesture was small, almost gentle. Then he lowered his hand. Halland did not scream, he told them. That was the worst part. A Krevax warrior screams when he is hurt. It is part of how their lungs work. Halland had screamed before, on other worlds, when blades had cut him to the bone. But that day, on the Cassiopeia, he made no sound at all. His radio simply went quiet. One moment he was there. The next moment he was not. He drew in a slow breath. I called for him. No answer. I called for the 2 with him. No answer. I sent one of my fastest hunters back along the corridor toward the engine deck. Her name was Iyari. She came from a world of cliffs and cold winds. She could move along walls and ceilings as easily as you and I walk on a floor. She was very brave, very proud. Vorathan's voice grew softer. She found Halland first. She told me on the radio, in a flat voice, that Halland was on the floor of the engine room. He was not moving. She said his armor had not been cut. There were no marks on it. None. But there was a small thing, she said, like a metal pin, behind his left ear. A simple thing. Not a weapon any of us would have brought. Something a human engineer might have on a workbench. A tool, perhaps. A part. He shook his head slowly. Halland's brain had stopped. They had pushed the pin in by hand. By hand. Not from a distance. Not with a gun. Someone had walked up behind a Krevax war champion in his full armor, in the middle of his own hunt, and ended him with a small piece of metal. Brand shifted in his seat. He did not speak. Iyari was very quiet on the radio after that. Vorathan went on. She said she could not see the other 2 of our team. She said the engine room lights were flickering. She said the air smelled wrong. She said she would climb up to the high pipes and wait, and watch, and find them. He paused. His good I was very far away. Iyari did not radio again. The chamber breathed. 3 minutes later, Vorathan said, I sent a second hunter back. His name was Rashik. He was old, like me, even then. He had survived more wars than I had. He told me, before he left, that something was wrong on this ship. He told me he had a bad feeling in his bones. I told him to go anyway. I told him we were the best hunters in the galaxy. I told him a sick human ship could not break us. A long silence. Rashik went into the engine deck. He found Iyari. She was tied to one of the high pipes by her own climbing wire. Her own wire, arbiter. They had taken it from her belt and used it on her. There was no blood on her. There was no struggle on her face. Rashik said her eyes were open and very surprised. He said it looked as if someone had simply asked her a question, and she had not had time to answer it. Vorathan's voice grew rougher. Rashik turned to leave. He did not run. Rashik never ran. He walked, very slowly, back toward the corridor. He had his weapon raised. He spoke to me on the radio the whole time. He told me what he was seeing. The dark corners. The empty rooms. The flickering lights. The cold air. He told me, near the end, that he could hear someone breathing behind a wall, just on the other side of a thin metal panel. Slow, calm breathing. He said the breathing did not match any of the 7 of us. He said it was a human. Vorathan stopped. Rashik fired through the wall. 6 shots. The breathing did not stop. Then his radio went dead. A counselor put a hand to her mouth. That was 3 of my hunters in less than 9 minutes, Vorathan said. Halland, Iyari, Rashik. 3 names that whole worlds had once paid not to anger. 3 of the best killers in the known galaxy. Gone. With no bodies brought back. With no faces seen of those who killed them. He looked up, and the human crew was still singing. A few of the council members made small sounds. Sounds of doubt. Sounds of disbelief. Vorathan watched them with his single yellow eye. You think I lie, he said. Or that I was tired. Or that I was beaten by tricks. I will tell you what I told myself, in that corridor, with my 3 hunters cold and gone. I told myself the same thing you are telling yourselves now. I told myself, this is impossible. I told myself, they are still small. They are still primitive. They are still afraid. I told myself, we are 7, and they are 42 unarmed explorers in a broken ship. I told myself many things. And then I heard the radio click. A new voice came on our private channel. A channel they should not have been able to find. The voice was calm. It was warm, even. It spoke our trade tongue with a soft, slow accent. It said, very politely, "Hello? My name is Holloway. I am the captain of this ship. I think we should talk before any more of your people get hurt." Vorathan's good eye closed for a moment. That was the first time I heard a human speak. A small lamp on the wall of the Concordat spire flickered once, then steadied. Kessa, the young aide at the back of the room, looked at it for a moment and then back at the old killer in the chair. She realized, with a small shock, that she had not blinked in some time. Vorathan turned his face slightly, as if remembering the shape of a corridor that no longer existed. "I told my 3 remaining hunters to fall back to the bridge of our own ship," he said. "I would handle the human captain alone. They argued. I refused. They obeyed, in the end. They were good soldiers. They climbed back through the torn hull of the Cassiopeia and crossed to our black ship in the dark of space, and they waited there for me. They were sure I would join them in an hour. I was sure too." He shook his head. "Holloway told me, on the radio, where he wanted to meet. A small mess hall, in the middle of the ship. He said there would be only him. He said he would be unarmed. He said the door behind me would not be locked. He said I could leave at any time." Vorathan let the silence settle. I did not believe him. Of course I did not. But I went. A counselor leaned forward, her hands gripped tight together. "The mess hall was warm," Vorathan said. "That was the first thing I noticed. The rest of the ship was cold, because their heat panels were damaged. But this one room was warm. There was a small table in the middle. 2 chairs. On the table, 2 cups. Steam was rising from both of them. Holloway was sitting in one of the chairs." He paused, remembering. He was a small man. Smaller than I had thought from the probe. He had brown skin and gray hair at his temples. His eyes were very dark and very calm. He was not in armor. He was in a simple gray uniform with a small patch on the chest. He had no weapon on the table. He had no weapon on his belt. His hands were folded around his cup. Vorathan's good eye closed. He smiled at me when I walked in. It was a small, tired smile. The smile of a man who has been working a long shift. He said, "Please, sit down. The drink is yours, if you want it. I do not know what your people like, but it is hot and it is sweet, and most species I have met enjoy at least one of those things." Bran made a quiet sound of disgust. Vorathan ignored him. I did not sit down at first. I stood near the door. I had my long blade in my hand. I told him I had come to kill him. I told him to drop any hidden weapon, or I would take his head before he could reach for it. I told him his crew were already dead. That last thing was a lie. I did not know how many of his crew were dead. I knew only that 3 of mine were. Vorathan's voice grew lower. He listened to me very carefully. When I was finished, he nodded. He said, "I understand." He said it the way a doctor says it to a patient who is afraid of a needle. Then he said, "I am not going to fight you. I would like very much for you to sit down. There is something I need to explain, and I think it will be easier if we are both warm and both holding something with our hands." The chamber was very still. I sat down, Vorathan said. I do not fully know why, even now. Perhaps I was tired. Perhaps I wanted to know how a man like that lived. Perhaps I knew, deep in the cold place under my ribs, that if I attacked him in that room, I would not leave that room. Perhaps all 3. He opened his good eye again. He did not move when I sat. He let me put my blade across the table, between us, where I could reach it faster than he could. He let me see his hands the whole time. He spoke very slowly. He said, "My ship is not what your people think it is. We were a survey crew, yes. But our crew is not 42. It is 28, plus 14 others who came on board 3 weeks ago, when our distress call was answered. The 14 were not surveyors. They were a recovery team from our home fleet. They are still on this ship." Vorathan's voice grew flat. He said, "I did not call you here to threaten you. I called you here because I do not want to lose any more of my people, and I do not want you to lose any more of yours. 3 of your hunters are gone. They were brave. They were skilled. I am sorry. We did not enjoy it. We never enjoy it. But this is our ship, and these are our friends, and you came here to kill us in our sleep." Vorathan looked at her. I laughed, he said. "May my long-dead mother forgive me." I laughed at him. A small, broken man with no weapon, in a cold ship, telling the deadliest hunter in 6 sectors to leave or die. I laughed. He drew in a long, slow breath. He did not laugh back. He sipped from his cup, and then, very softly, he said, "I was hoping you would say that, but I was praying you would not." Far above the capital city, the rain had turned to snow. Soft white flakes brushed the dark stone of the Concordat spire and slid down its sides into the night. Inside, no one moved. Vorathan reached up and touched the smooth black pit where his left eye used to be. His hand was steady. The chamber waited. "I should tell you what happened next," he said. "But the truth is that I do not remember most of it. I remember pieces. I remember the table going sideways. I remember a sound like a heavy door closing somewhere far away. I remember the smell of my own burnt skin. I remember the lights going out, and then on, and then out again." He let his hand fall. "I remember 3 of Holloway's people stepping out of the walls. Not from doors. From the walls themselves. Thin panels that I had not seen, that I would never have seen, hidden behind soft cloth. Each one held a small weapon I did not recognize. Each one moved with no hurry. None of them spoke. Holloway never raised his voice. He never stood from his chair. He simply watched me try to fight. Vorathan's good eye narrowed. "I am Vorathan the Hollow. I have killed warlords on 6 worlds. I have ended the bloodlines of kings. In that small warm room, with 1 weapon and a body trained over 600 years, against 3 humans I had never met, I lasted a little under 2 minutes." A counselor in the front row let out a long, slow breath. "They did not kill me," Vorathan said. "That is the part you must hear. They did not kill me. When I fell, when my long blade slid out of my hand and my one knee touched the warm floor, they stopped. They stepped back. They lowered their weapons. They looked to Holloway. He nodded once. And then he stood up and walked over to me, and he knelt down beside me, and he asked, in a quiet voice, if I could still hear him. Vorathan paused. I could, just barely. My left eye was gone by then. There was blood in my mouth. I could feel 2 of my ribs in the wrong places. But I could hear him. He drew in a slow breath. He said, "I am sorry. I truly am. I want you to listen to me now. Can you do that?" I nodded. I could not speak. He said, "Good." He waited a moment, to be sure I was paying attention. Then he said, "There is 1 of you left on your black ship. The other 2 are already gone. Your people are very good, but my people have been on this ship for 3 weeks longer than yours, and we know every corner of it. And we knew you were coming 6 days before you arrived." The chamber stirred. 6 days, a counselor whispered. 6 days, Vorathan repeated. Holloway told me, very calmly, that they had picked up our jump signature far out in the dark, and they had read it, and they had known who we were. They had known our names. They had known our ship. They had known the contract. They had spent 3 weeks getting ready for us. 3 weeks of singing while they worked. 3 weeks of pretending the wreck of their ship was as broken as it looked. Vorathan's voice grew very tired. The Cassiopeia was not a wounded ship. She was a trap. A baited trap. We were not the hunters. We had never been the hunters. From the moment we came out of jump, we were inside something that had been built around us, very slowly, with great care. He looked down at his hands. Holloway told me one more thing. He said, "I am going to let you live. I am going to let you walk back to your ship. You will find 1 of your people there, alive. The rest are gone. I am going to let the 2 of you fly home. And I want you to listen very carefully, because I will say this only once." Vorathan's voice dropped almost to a whisper and somehow filled the entire chamber. A long silence held the room. He said, "But we will. If you make us. So please, do not make us. Tell them. Make sure they hear it. Make sure they believe it. Because the next ship of hunters who comes for us will not get a captain in a warm room offering them a drink. They will not get a warning. They will not get a witness. They will get our worst. And our worst is a thing the galaxy has not yet seen, and we would all of us, every one of us, prefer that you never do." Vorathan looked up. Then he stood, and he had his people carry me back to my ship, and the surviving member of my hunting party flew us home. For a long time after Vorathan stopped speaking, no one in the Concordat spire said anything at all. The snow kept falling outside. The lamps kept their soft blue light. 60 council members sat on their stone benches and did not move. It was Saloon who finally broke the quiet. "And the surviving hunter?" she asked. "What happened to her?" Vorathan did not look up. "She did not speak for 2 years," he said. "When she did, she spoke only to her family and only of small things. The weather, the food, the garden behind her father's house. She never went off-world again. She died 11 years ago, in her sleep, in a small bed on her home moon. I went to her funeral. There were 6 of us there. That was all she wanted. He paused. I have not taken a contract since that day on the Cassiopeia. 26 years. The galaxy still uses my name to scare its children, and I let them. I let them because I am too tired to ask them to stop, and because if my name is what keeps a few young hunters from doing what we did, then let it keep doing that work. I will not need it where I am going. He looked up at last. His one yellow eye was very steady. I came here today because I read the proposal. I read the names of the worlds that signed it. I read the words you used. Primitive. Loud. Strange. Tier 3. I read those words, and I remembered a small warm room, and a man with gray at his temples, and a cup of something hot and sweet. And I knew that if I did not stand in this chamber today, no one else would. The hunters who learned what I learned are mostly dead. The ones who saw what I saw are gone. There is only me, and I am old. So I came. He folded his long hands in his lap once more. I have spoken my hour. I have nothing else. Selûne sat very still on her dark stone seat. For a long moment, she did not call the vote. She looked at Vorathan. Then she looked at Bran. Then she looked at the rows of council members, one face at a time, the way Vorathan himself had looked at them when he first came in. Counselor Bran, she said, do you wish to speak before the vote? Bran did not stand. He stayed in his seat with his thin gray hands folded in his lap, and he stared at the floor in front of him, and after a long time, he said, very quietly, no, Arbiter. I do not. Selûne nodded. Then we vote, she said. The proposal before us is the eradication of the human species before further expansion. Those in favor, raise your hand. No hand went up. Not Bran's. Not the counselor in the back who had laughed when Vorathan first walked in. Not the one who had spoken first against humanity that morning. Not one. Selûne let her gaze travel across the room. She let the silence be the answer. The proposal fails, she said, without a single vote in favor. Let it be entered into the record, she said, that on this day the Concordat chose to do nothing, to send no fleet, to draw no border, to make no demand. We choose, instead, to step back. We choose to leave a young species in peace. Not because we are kind, not because we are fair, but because a man who has earned more right than any of us to speak of war told us, in plain words, that this one is not worth fighting. She turned to Vorathan. You may go, she said, and you have our thanks. Vorathan rose slowly from his chair. His joints made their small dry sounds. He bowed his head a little to her, the same small bow he had given when he came in. He did not speak. He turned, and he walked toward the side door, his long shape passing under the high stone arch. At the door he stopped. Kessa was standing there, the young aide. She was crying, though she did not seem to know it. She was holding something out to him in her small hand. A cup. A simple cup of something hot. Vorathan looked down at her for a long moment. Then, very slowly, the old killer smiled. It was a small, tired smile. The smile of a man who has been working a long shift. He took the cup from her with great care, the way one takes a sleeping child from a stranger. He held it in both of his old gray hands. He bent his head over it for a moment, as if breathing in a memory. Thank you, he said softly. And then Vorathan the Hollow walked out into the snow, and the galaxy, for the first time in 600 years, let him go in peace.